World War I, now called the Great War, was the first catastrophe in the 20th century caused by men. There is a lot of controversy about how it began. First of all, the spark of the event happened when the Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated on Sarajevo in June 1914 by a Serbian nationalist. But this is not the only cause. There are different situations that helped this country to get into the war, and they are easily explained with the anagram MAIN, which means militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. Starting with militarism, it is possible to say that European nations increased their military spending to defend their empires. Between these nations, Germany was one of the most important. It had a strong army and was building a navy, which led it to be the strongest nation militarily in Europe. For letter A, we have the alliance system. This was a division of countries that had already happened by 1907. The Triple Entente was formed by France, Britain, and Russia, while the Triple Alliance or Central Powers were formed of Italy, Austria-Hungary, and Germany. Imperialism, on the other hand, consisted of the action of forming empires by adding territory to the nations conquered. The desire of having greater empires between the nations led to a feeling of competition and confrontation that helped pushing the war. Last but not least, nationalism led directly to the war because it was based on the Slavic people's wish of stop being part of Austria-Hungary and instead join Serbia, but generally each country tried to show that they were the most powerful nation of all the other. Finally, the war started, and it was meant to continue for a very short time, but instead it lasted for 4 years, with at least 10 million people dead. There were a lot of areas where the battles were held. Between these, we found Western Front, where the following battles were fought, without either side gaining land. Another special battle was Gallipoli, and it is remembered for the use of chemical weapons, like gas, especially mustard gas.
The Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919 by the European powers in order to end World War I. France, United Kingdom, and USA reunited in the Paris Peace Conference during February to March of 1919, in which there were many agreements, such as establishing peace with Germany. The Treaty of Versailles was divided into articles, and some fragments of them mention the following. Article 10. The members of the League undertake to respect and preserve as against external aggression the territorial integrity and existing political independence of all members of the League. In case of any such aggression or in case of any threat or danger of such aggression, the Council shall advise upon the means by which this obligation shall be fulfilled. Article 19. The Assembly may from time to time advise a reconsideration by members of the League or treaties which have become inapplicable and the consideration of international conditions whose continuance might endanger the peace of the world. Article 21. Nothing in this convention shall be deemed to affect the validity of international engagements, such as treaties of arbitration or regional undertakings like the Monroe Doctrine, for securing the maintenance of peace. Germany became a country in need of revenge. The Nazism obtained power in the leadership of Adolf Hitler, which would lead Germany into another battleship, the World War II. It also introduced Germany into new economic problems. Many soldiers were seriously injured, while others were killed. The main reason of why it was created was in order to stop the war. There were many destructions because of it, and the countries wanted it to stop immediately. But what happened as a consequence of it was the World War II, which began in 1939. It also had economic, political, and physical impacts. Germany had lost land. Germany was responsible of paying all the reparations caused by war, which was in an amount of 6,600 million pounds a month, but at the same time tried to reconstruct her economy. It was thought that the ones who lost the war were the politicians rather than the army, so this caused people to stop trusting in the government.
The Great Depression was the longest economic problem in American history, happened from 1921 to 1931. But why did it happen? By that time, governments were concentrated on maintaining a balanced budget. The taxes increased and the spending was reduced. But as the depression continued, economists advised to increase the spending in order to promote employment. At the same time, it is thought that it was caused by overproduction, because the people didn't want to or didn't afford to pay for that quantity of materials. All these situations, together with other theories, created the stock market crash of 1921, which is known as the starting event for the Great Depression. Here, people's investments were wiped out while the public were shaken. There were bank failures that erased the savings of almost everyone in America. There are some characteristics that mark this event. Some of before that Social Security was created, the welfare state was used by the government, there was a drop in the farm income, people were unable to pay loans, unemployment rate reached 25%, people used to spend $4 out of 10 to buy stock, people who couldn't afford to pay for a good home used to live in Hoovervilles, that were little houses made of cardboard and sheets, which were imposed by President Herbert Hoover. As an additional fact, the Empire State Building and the Golden Gate Bridge were built during the Depression. Also, as a way to end the recession, Roosevelt created the New Deal, which mainly created jobs that were supported by the government, were relief program, and were related to construction in its majority, even though the New Deal didn't end the Great Depression.
What does the concept totalitarianism means? Totalitarianism is a form of autocracy in which a state has total control over its citizens. Totalitarianism shares characteristics with other forms of autocracy, such as dictatorships and authoritarian governments, exercising control over the freedom, will, and thought of others. North Korea is one of the major examples of a totalitarian government operating as of 2016. While North Korea calls itself a democratic republic, its ruler has complete control over all aspects of life among the country, making it more of a dictatorship that is totalitarian in practice. Other countries with dictatorships and authoritarian rules such as Cuba, Syria, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Belarus could also be considered totalitarian governments who exercise too much power over their countries.
Joseph Stalin established a totalitarian regime in Russia from 1928 until his death in 1935. Joseph Vissarionovich, best known as Stalin, which means steel in Russian, was born in 1879. He joined the Social Democratic Labour Party in 1901, and in 1917 he joined the Bolsheviks, where he befriended Lenin and Trotsky. During Lenin's reign, Stalin ensured the political elites were by his side. So, after Lenin's death, he took power over Russia and killed his main rival Leon Trotsky. He took control over all the communication media and manipulated education so that kids would be schooled in the communist ideology. Writers and painters had to glorify him in their masterpieces. He also made use of propaganda so that people would perceive him as a kind father of Russia. In fact, there was an attempt of calling him Uncle Joe to give this perspective. Families were expected to have a portrait of Stalin in their houses, and he opposed religion so that everything would glorify only him. People who were against Stalin's ideology would be sent to the forced work camps known as gulags, and also kill people who he thought were dangerous. Between 1932 and 1933, there was a great famine in Ukraine, known as Holodomor, that means hunger, in which the government allowed most of the population starve to death because of the collectivization of crops. But was it that bad? He did help to industrialize the country, and plans for economic development began. Women gained more rights during Stalin's regime, and Russia defeated the Nazis.
Stalin's government violated many human rights, but a way to summarize its violations could be by calling it a complete elimination of freedom. The Article 1 of the Human Rights states that all human beings are born free and equal. This was completely ignored, with many rules and standards placed by Stalin for people to follow. Many of these rules violated more than freedom. For example, Stalin controlled people's thoughts by easily manipulating the media. He had total control of any type of media. People could only listen, see, or hear what he chose. He even took the name of Uncle Joe for him to look like a father or a protector of all Soviets, and forced writers, painters, and some other artists to express in a matter which gloried him. This all was called social realism. Some artists and authors were so depressed that they suicided instead. The human rights also state that no one can be subjected to arbitrary arrest. However, Stalin killed anyone who didn't follow his rule and decided who could live and who wouldn't. If anyone expressed negatively about him or his system, they would be eliminated. The freedom to believe in anything you wanted was also abolished because of the attacks on churches. People were taught that religion was the opium of masses. Church leaders were arrested and churches shut down. Stalin could not only allow someone to challenge him, and God was considered a powerful cult by him. Even the school was manipulated by him for children to basically learn how to be a good socialist communist and learn about Stalin's participation in the revolution and his relationship with Lenin.